Go live.
Right now, 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 right now. Oh, I got a real good feeling.
We try to bring you high-quality educational and informational content every single day. Why do you think the price is having such an anemic time? The news story of the hour. Jump onto the chart. Is this the beginning of a massive financial unraveling? We got to add a little addendum to the show map today, and shall we start here on the daily. Now, we've been looking at the RSI on Bitcoin's daily chart for the last several days. It always has been, but it's been increasing over the last 50 years since the government has been getting bigger. Hey guys, what's going on? Jebb here, and welcome back to Coffee and Crypto. This is your weekdaily morning show where we bring you the latest in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency technical, on-chain, and fundamental analysis. And in today's episode, we got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, guys, Bitcoin absolutely blew it. It really did, because over the last several days, we have watched Bitcoin climbing all the way up into the $18,000 region, waiting for a break to the upside, and we had the perfect opportunity to do it also. We had the perfect opportunity for Bitcoin to have a rally in response to CPI data coming out that was very bullish, in response to the Federal Reserve rate coming out that was also perceived anyway to be bullish. In the long term, it's not bullish for Bitcoin, but in the short term, it was so much very perceived to be a bullish thing for Bitcoin that we saw the 50 basis point rate hike. Unfortunately, Bitcoin was not able to capitalize upon that opportunity. It's actually dropped $1,000 from where it was just a little over 24 hours ago. So in this episode of Coffee and Crypto, we're going to be discussing why Bitcoin did that, why it was not able to break above resistance around 18.8 to 19.2 that we'd been talking about. And I'm going to explain what it means for the next several months on Bitcoin, because this was one of its biggest opportunities to go into a rally. But first, let's also run over a few other things we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the fusion breakthrough that you guys have been talking about for some time. If you don't know, I have a background in astrophysics and quantum mechanics. I never went to school for them. I don't mean it like that, but I studied it as a hobby for years. And I always wanted to go into astrophysics, and I decided, you know what? I really don't like schooling. I love to learn, but I don't like school. So I decided to go into engineering, and then I dropped that to start this YouTube channel. So that's the story of my life professionally, if you will. But the first thing I wanted to do in life, other than being a carpenter, was to be an astrophysicist. So I've studied it quite extensively. So I have a background of knowledge that I want to bring to you on that breakthrough, because it is actually a very important breakthrough over at the Ignition facility here in the United States, being able to produce more energy, about 3.05 megajoules for 2.15 megajoules input. That's a big deal, and fusion scientists have been trying to figure that out for 70 years, and we're going to talk about what that means for the future of the grid, the electrical grid, and what that means for Bitcoin as well. This is probably going to be the longest-term technical analysis I've ever done, because we're talking about the impacts this could have on Bitcoin 30 to 50 years from now, but you might find it interesting. Also, the United States is preparing to send U.S. Patriot missile batteries over to Ukraine, and Russia doesn't like it. So we're going to talk about what that means and how that is the biggest development on the Ukrainian-Russian war front to date. Not to date, but today. And we're going to discuss that. But first, of course, we've got to read some green names. We've got Mike Lowry in chat. Happy Financial Sovereignty Friday, everybody. Hashtag FinSov. If you guys don't know, today is FinSov Friday. Every Friday is FinSov Friday. Basically, FinSov, financial sovereignty, it's this idea of not having your finances be the master of you. There's a verse in the Bible where it talks about, it's in 1 Corinthians, I believe it's in the 5th chapter. I will be mastered by nothing. And that's what I want you to live in financially. That verse is not talking about finances, is talking about a certain type of sin issue. But the verse is saying that you will not be mastered by anything. You will not be a slave to anything. You will not be a servant to anything, but maybe not a servant, but you'll not be a slave unto anything, especially that's a sin issue. But I don't want you to be a servant or a slave to your finances. I don't want that for you. I've lived that life. I've watched people live that life. Most people live that life. That's not what I want for you. I want you to be the master of your finances, because that's the proper order of things. And for you to be a master of your finances, knowledge is power, and that's why I want to bring you as much high-quality educational and informational content as I possibly can here on YouTube and the other platforms that you'll find me active on. So that's what financial sovereignty is putting you back in charge of your money. And by the way, one final announcement before I keep reading green names. Today will be the last stream for a little while. We're going to be taking a Christmas break, much needed. Been a very long year. We're looking forward to the rest and basically an extended Sabbath. If you don't know what a Sabbath is, it's basically this idea of your entire focus is not work, it's rest. And that's what we're going to be doing for the next 10 days or so. The next time you will see my smiling face here on Coffee and Crypto Live, the actual show will be, I believe it'll be 2 weeks from yesterday, which will be December 29th. So enjoy your time not thinking about the world for a minute, not thinking about war and pandemic, which is getting to be a big problem in China, not thinking about fusion, which, I mean, that's pretty cool, or crypto going down. Enjoy your time with family. It'll be here when you get back. I'll probably make a phone video or two during that time, but I'll be, for the most part, radio silent. You might see a few things on Twitter. But again, for the most part, you're not going to hear too much from me. But I'm really looking forward to being back, because this new year is going to be epic. We got so many things that we're working on, and I cannot wait to show them to you. Anyway, back to green names. Oh my said, good morning, fam. Hope everyone has a good weekend. Hashtag FinSov. Indeed. Got a mellow fellow in chat. CBD Suddy. We got BTC Crypto Alerts. What's up? We got people said Pim said, steady lads. Indeed, be steady lads. It's not something to be worried about. Obi-Wan, you were the chosen one post CPI report. Bitcoin falls into the 16K range. Exactly. That's pretty much the commentary. You know what? We can just wrap the stream right now here. I'll just give me 1 second. I'll just roll the outro. No, I'm kidding. That's pretty much the whole stream in a nutshell. You had your chance, Bitcoin. What happened? Hey, it was the best thing I could do at a stoplight with people watching me text and drive. Oh, nice. Oof, that's rough. Justin Eubanks in chat also said, good morning, Crypto Jebb. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. We got CBD Suddy, Justin Eubanks. Mike Lowry did a members chat. By the way, it looks like we have about 350 people watching already, so that means some new people are probably here. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We're about to jump into some Bitcoin and geopolitical and financial market content. Let's see if we can't get up to 200 likes. Mike Lowry said, just wanted to say thank you again for all you do, Jebb. I hope you and your family have an amazing Christmas. Thank you. I am really looking forward to it, guys. It is our first Christmas together as a family. If you guys don't know, I got married on March 5th this year and became a father on the same day. And it was a beautiful time, and I'm really looking forward to spending it with my wife and my son. Crypto Mini Bike in chat said, good morning, everybody. Let's see. Who am I missing? Cash of Cats in chat. Rest, Jebb, and FinSov, Sarah. I will write it down. There you go. Like I said, we'll be back the 29th. Cash of Cats, Crypto JMP, back in the green. What's up, JMP? Welcome back, man. Thank you for rejoining as a member. We got Mitch Shaw. Let's see, am I missing anybody? We got Queen in chat, of course. Corey in chat said, Fusion is huge. It trumps Bitcoin. It will change everything, literally everything. Yes, but it's a big if, and I'm really looking forward to nerding out on that. So you'll have to bear with me a little bit because it is I hope interesting, but very important. The Classic IT guy in chat saying, Merry Christmas, Jebb. Merry Chrysler to all of you guys as well. Let's go ahead and jump on over to CoinMarketCap. Bitcoin, what are you doing, man? We're sitting at 40% market dominance, which is going down. We're sitting at $17,000, which is going down. Ethereum's down 4.5%. What's up? If we look over here at Bitcoin, and by the way, I have my laptop back, so we'll actually be able to look at the chart properly today. Bitcoin had this huge opportunity to go through a massive rally here, and it did try. It did break above the resistance that we were talking about. It did break up to $18,400. Now it's at $17,000. In just the last 48 hours, honestly, less than that, the last 36 hours, we've dropped $1,500, down 8%. Let's back up. Let me just break it down for you, not the dance way, but like an explanation of what was going on this week, why this was such a powerful setup, and then we'll talk about why I think it failed. Simply put, here's what I believe happened. First and foremost, CPI and the effective federal funds rate, and I've talked about both of these numbers at length over the last several weeks. You can go back to any piece of content I've made, and you'll probably see me talking about it. Both of these numbers are remarkably important to the Bitcoin market because both of these numbers indicate the CPI indicating the strength of the U.S. dollar and the effective federal funds rate indicating the constrictions and constraints and tools that the Fed uses to manipulate the U.S. dollar respectively. The U.S. dollar is the single biggest driver of price action in Bitcoin right now, other than for about a 3-day period where it was actually FTX driving the price. Other than that 3-day crash where FTX dropped the price $4,000, the US dollar and its strength and the policy around it is the single most powerful impactor on Bitcoin's price, hands down, bar none. More important than what's going on Capitol Hill with the hearings, more important than what's going on with development in the space. More important than BlockFi going bankrupt, not more important than FTX going bankrupt. That was a black swan that caused a huge price movement. But other than that, the last 3 months or more, the biggest impactor of price has hands down, bar none, been the EFFR, the Dixie, and the CPI. Those three things are incredibly important. So the Dixie being the dollar currency index, representing the strength of the dollar against a basket of other world currencies. The EFFR being the effective federal funds rate. That's the rate that the Federal Reserve sets to set the baseline for what interest rates the entire market is going to play by. And then the CPI obviously being the fabricated, but nevertheless policy setting number that lawmakers use, or that the Fed uses to determine how bad or how good inflation is. It's an arbitrary metric. I don't really like CPI all that much. I don't think it includes everything that it should, but it's what we go off of, and that's what everybody talks in. If it's a bad language, but everybody speaks it, then I guess that's better than no language at all, you might say. So we had bullish news coming out of both of those. We saw the EFFR jump 50 basis points instead of 75. That should have been bullish in the minds of many people in crypto, but let me break this down. In the long term, it's not bullish for Bitcoin because a hiked rate at 50 basis points leads to a stronger dollar. The U.S. wants a very strong dollar right now because of the economic war that we're in against Russia, and Russia knows it, and we're going to talk about that in a second when we get to this Patriot missile system, Patriot missile battery donation news story. There are two people in the market in crypto. There's the retail who don't understand a lot, and then there's the, and I don't want you to be that. I want you to be a third category. There's the retail that doesn't understand a lot, and there's the institutions that have geopolitical and financial and cryptocurrency advisors out the wazoo, and they're paying $10 million a month just for their consultancies. I want you, and so the massive financial firms understand something. They understand that a 50 basis point rate hike is bad for Bitcoin, even if it's not as bad as 75 basis points would have been. 50 basis points isn't as bad for Bitcoin as 75, but it's still bad for Bitcoin. It's the lesser of two evils, but it's still bad for Bitcoin because it's good for the dollar. It's not good for the economy, and it not being good for the economy means it's not good for Bitcoin, because if it's bad for the economy and good for the dollar, that's terrible, because the Bitcoin thrives in a strong economy, weak dollar scenario. Right now, we have a strong dollar, weak economy scenario, and it's getting even more pronounced in that direction because of the Fed rate. But there's also some retail in the space that think, oh, gee whiz, it's only a 50 basis point rate hike now instead of 75. That's really good. And so they'll want to buy the market off of that. And that sector right there that don't really understand what the effective federal funds rate is, what it does, how it impacts Bitcoin or the dollar, and why it's being manipulated the way that it is for the sake of fighting a geopolitical conflict monetarily, they don't understand that. So they see 50 basis points. Yippee-ki-yay, money's going to start getting cheaper soon. We're going to plateau at 4.75, and maybe we do. I'm not totally discrediting the idea that we're going to see 25 next time and then we're not going to see any more rate hikes. That's possible. At this point, I think it's unlikely. I think you'll end up seeing another 50 basis point rate hike because this conflict is going on a lot longer than a lot of people thought it would. A lot of people thought that Russia would have ran over Ukraine in the first 2 weeks, and now that they took Kherson, a lot of people thought they would have run over Crimea by now. They're planning for it. An offensive was launched 2 days ago in the Donetsk and around Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia region, moving down towards the Sea of Azov. In Ukraine, that is. But anyway, so those are the two conflicting viewpoints. That was supposed to, in theory, be a good thing for Bitcoin when we saw CPI drop, because that meant the economy was getting better, and we saw the effective federal funds rate hike go down, because that was supposed to mean a slightly less strong dollar. That FOMO was supposed to come into the space and cause a rally. Now, the reason I say FOMO is because it wasn't exactly fundamental. Again, CPI coming down is decent for Bitcoin. I'd argue the funds rate is more important. The CPI is a headline number that people like to pay attention to, and great. People like it when it comes down because it means there's a better forecast on the horizon for what the economy looks like. A deeper view into what the economy is going to be doing in the next 3 years shows, oh my goodness, that's scary. And the big money knows it because they can afford the analysts who are able to look at it. I'm trying to give you some of that analysis so that you can make the same informed decisions that, JP Morgan and Wells Fargo are making with the understanding of where the global economy is going. So the people that are retail see the CPI go down and say, oh, look, economic outlook, looking great, champ. But they don't understand the deeper game afoot here. They don't understand how deep the rabbit hole goes. And it goes pretty dang deep. The economy's in trouble big time, especially if you're not in the United States or Mexico or Canada. If you're not in one of those three nations, you're in deep crap here in the next 5 years because globalization is unraveling right now. And all of the stuff that you buy, all the jobs that you have come into a lot of danger. Again, so the setup was that we were supposed to see Bitcoin rally aggressively. It did not. And this actually makes a lot of sense to me. Bitcoin had an opportunity, and it didn't actually follow through with it. Why? That's what you want to know. I will tell you why I think Bitcoin didn't follow through on it. The EFFR dropping down to 50 basis points, that's the funds rate, as you've heard it called, instead of a 75 basis point rate hike, is a FOMO news story. People like that story because it's easy to understand. You don't have to spend 20, 30, 40, 50, 1,000 hours trying to understand the economy and geopolitics and financial markets and supply chains to understand 50 basis point better than 75 because higher interest rate is bad. That's the surface level understanding that many people have. So when we saw a 50 basis point rate hike, that was not so much a fundamental development that was good for Bitcoin. That was more of a FOMO development that was good for Bitcoin. The tricky thing is that there's so much FUD in the market right now that the bears won. So we had a FOMO and FUD clash here 36 hours ago, and we were jumping up to 18.2. And the bears with their FUD around FTX and the FUD around the institutional traders and investors who understand what the economy is going to do in the next 3 years dropped the price. Again, I'm not a perma bear. I've told you this many times. I am a perma bull, and I'm fine being called that if you're giving me a 10-year time horizon to be that perma bull. Totally fine with that. I am absolutely confident that 10 years from now, Bitcoin will be worth at very least double what its all-time high is. I'm very confident in that. Next 3 years, it's going to be hard. I still think we'll hit 100K or more, but it is going to be an interesting movement to the upside. So why did Bitcoin drop? Why did Bitcoin drop and not just trade sideways? Well, here's the deal. Bitcoin was trying to push up against some of the strongest resistance that it has seen in a very long time. That resistance here at starting at $18,000 and then moving up to $19,000 is very stiff. We didn't even get to the worst of it, which was at 19.2. If you remember, in fact, I did office hours yesterday, and somebody, it might have been Brian, it was either Brian or Connor, told me, asked me what the most significant resistance levels are, and I told him it's going to be 18.8, 19.2, 20,000, 22,000, and then 30,000. Those are the big levels to look at. I'll just go ahead and draw all of them on the chart here. 18.8, 19.2, 20K, psychological level for the most part, not too much relevance other than that. 22K, we'll call it. We'll just put it right here. And then the next level after that I'm really concerned about is 30,000 because that's the baseline somewhat for the market that we saw back in 2021. These levels are significant. The reason is every single one of them is very difficult to break through, especially 18.8 to 19.2. That region right there was hanging over our heads, and the bulls know it. The bulls can see the exact same, especially the ones that are trading with a lot of money, can see the exact same technicals that I'm showing you. They realize, oh gosh, that's some strong resistance, and we're going to try and break through it with what? Some good CPI data and the FOMO of a Fed rate hike. We're literally saying that the pig looks beautiful because it's got lipstick on. That's what we're saying whenever we say, oh, it's only a 50 basis point rate hike. Guys, it's still a pig. You know, you put lipstick on it, but it's still a pig. It's still a rate hike. It's better than it could have been, I guess. Still a 50 basis point rate hike. I was hoping, that's why I told you guys, I was hoping that the excitement from that in the retail space would push us beyond 19.2. Didn't happen. Now we know. There's not a lot of retail in the space that is dumb money, if you will. If you're still in the space, if you're watching this stream, you're probably very smart money. You're probably the kind of money that is in this space and you know what you're doing and you've been here for a while. There's not a lot of new money here. There's not a lot of dumb money. I don't mean that in an ad hominem attack way. I mean dumb money as in, maybe I should say ignorant money that doesn't understand the market very well. There's not a lot of that in the crypto markets right now. People that are in crypto, one, are hodling, two, are trying to trade the volatility, and three, they're not bullish yet because the market has not proven itself to be worthy of buying. So what happened here, I think, is that we saw CPI come out, EFFR come out, whoop-de-doo. We were hoping that both of those would lead to a big rally. That was the best opportunity we have seen since the collapse of FTX for a rally, and I'll tell you what I think happened. I think the bulls saw this resistance zone between 18.8 and 19.2 and said, oh my gosh, I'm good. The time to buy was back here, not right here, because remember, we're in a market where there's a lot of smart money left. It's not a lot of dumb money left. It's a lot of smart money left. That smart money is going to look at this trade, and they're going to go on Lux Algo, for example. Look at that. I didn't even plan that. I just know Lux Algo so well. I literally just drew this here saying this is where they buy. I promise you guys, I don't lie to you. I did not even plan that, but that's exactly where the buy signal was. You can scrub back and look at that. The buy signal was right here. People are going to have entered the trade right here. Why would they enter the trade up here? It's a fair question. And so that's why I told you guys, look, we have an opportunity. We could break bullish here, but we're getting overextended, and hopefully we do. Hopefully we do get above 18.8 and just go parabolic, but clearly there wasn't enough FOMO in the space. Or we break bearish out of the rising wedge, which was the original idea. The original idea that I posited to you guys a week and a half ago was that Bitcoin is going to break bearish out of this rising wedge, which we can now see has begun because the rising wedge goes right here. We're going to break bearish out of this rising wedge, and then Bitcoin is going to drop farther, and then that's where the support regions that I talked about come into play. However, there was this hope anyway that we'd be able to break bullish here.
It just wasn't to be. You needed way too much strength, and there was not enough fuel. It was that simple. That's the way it goes, guys. If you have a very difficult road ahead of you and you don't have enough fuel to punch through it, enough rocket fuel to get through it, you're not going to get through it. And so that's what happened. Bitcoin fell over. People were expecting a hype cycle. People were expecting the market to be extremely bullish. I was certainly hoping that this news would be big enough to get people excited again. But I mean, maybe the groundhog sees 6 more weeks of winter, and that's kind of what it looks like right now. Is that the reality is settling into people that this is a season. This is not just a few week period where we're dealing with the fallout of FTX. We're dealing with whether or not Binance is solvent, which I hope and think they are. If they're not, this gets a lot worse before it gets better. They're dealing with the fact that there's new legislation being pushed every single day by the likes of Warren, by Gensler, by Maxine Waters, by people on Capitol Hill. They're dealing with the fact that Kevin O'Leary went before Congress and basically he was trying to advocate, I guess, and then it just didn't really work out. People are dealing with the fact that he was with FTX. You know, there's a lot of things going on in crypto right now that people are having their confidence shaken. What confidence they had is being shaken. And so I think people are realizing, look, this high rate season, this strong dollar season, this geopolitical conflict season, this season of deglobalization, this season of increased national focus rather than international focus amongst major nations, especially the United States, is creating a very difficult backdrop for Bitcoin to rally on. This is going to be the most difficult bull market Bitcoin has ever witnessed. The first 2 bull markets, the S&P 500 was steadily growing into the right. We were in the golden area. We were in the first wave of Pax Americana, which I don't think is over, but I think is going to change. We were bullish. The tech sector was growing. Right now, the tech sector is shrinking. We've seen, by my estimation, at least 40,000 tech jobs evaporate in the last 3 months from the likes of Meta, Alphabet, Twitter, of course. That's a seismic shift in the industry. That is a massive labor market and capital shift that we've not seen the likes of in a very long time. So the next 3 years are going to be very tumultuous for crypto. They're going to be very tumultuous for the global markets. And it really actually is funny because the analogy of Bitcoin going into its awkward teenage years, I think that's honestly what this is going to look like. Bitcoin has been rampaging and just going absolutely wild and jumping to the upside and crashing to the floor and being very erratic, like my 2-year-old. Very in the span of 2 minutes. That's what Bitcoin's been doing because it was less than 13 years old. But with Bitcoin turning 13 and about to turn 14, whoo-wee, Bitcoin's about to get into high school. And you know the hormones go wild. And the world's getting weird. And so I think the next 3 years are going to be very strange for Bitcoin. I don't think you're going to see the exact same, just upwards and to the right and then downwards and to the right movement with these massive, extremely confident swings. Because before, when Bitcoin was in a rally, it was confident. Boom, we're in a bull market. Get out of my way, world. We're gobbling up $100 billion a day. Or when we're dropping, this thing's terrible. Flip the table and it drops 30% a day. I think you're going to start to see Bitcoin slowly mature, but the transition, and it's funny, the analogy works well. The transition from being a very black and white emotionally kid to being a mature and more stable adult is kind of what it looks like Bitcoin's going to go through right now. Because I think in 5 to 7 years, the global economy, geopolitics will more than likely stabilize and will settle into a new global order. But that's going to take some time because with China undergoing the issues that it's undergoing, with the fact that there's the first boots on the ground shooting war of this caliber in Europe in 70 years, with the shutting down of airspace nationally in Russia and other places for the first time really since 1992 and the collapse of the Soviet Union, and supply chain issues, all kinds of raw resource constrictions, the fact that people are having to deal with increased labor costs while also having a smaller workforce to deal with in manufacturing, while also not being able to get the raw materials that they need. I mean, you can go down the list. You got iron problems. You got oil problems. You got natural gas problems. You got neon problems. You have wheat problems. You have sunflower oil problems. You can name the commodity, and it's in trouble if you're somewhere in the world and you're asking for it. This is a very difficult time for the world. This is a very difficult time for Bitcoin because Bitcoin being a teenager, if you got a teenager, you're going to need a stable house because that teenager is going to be unstable and you want to shed some of your stability onto that teen. And that's what Bitcoin's going through right now. Is it's like a teenager in a house that is shall we say, not stable. So it's going to be a very interesting few years as Bitcoin is trying to, grow out a mullet and has a lot of acne. That's what we're going to see in the next 4 years as it is maturing and as Congress, the parents of Bitcoin, are trying to set what rules and policies it can follow, and Bitcoin's going to be doing everything it can to break the rules. Long story short, this is going to be a difficult 3 years for Bitcoin, and the elites and the big money knows it. But you know something else that they know? They know that Bitcoin's not going anywhere, and it's indestructible. Bitcoin is the first indestructible asset in the history of mankind. You drop a nuclear weapon on Washington, D.C., the dollar loses its value overnight. Okay? You can't do that to Bitcoin. It being decentralized, there is no single point of failure at all, whatsoever. You can't kill it. It's a how did Michael Saylor put it on this channel? It's a mind virus that'll infect everything it touches, and it's completely and totally incapable of being destroyed. It's like an army of nanomachines that replicate themselves everywhere they go, and you can't stop it no matter how hard you try. The elites know that. And unlike you and me, oftentimes, now we shouldn't be like this, but unlike you and me, the elites oftentimes have a 10, 20, 30-year time horizon. Oftentimes, we're so caught up in what happens tomorrow that we can't see the forest for the trees, and we're so focused on this tree right ahead of us that we don't realize there's a huge forest ahead. The elites realize that. The big money players know that. The people that are trying to put the real money in, I'm talking $100 million, $200 million, $1 billion, $10 billion, $100 billion into Bitcoin and crypto, they know this game. That's why I'm trying to give you the behind the veil. I'm trying to pull off the face of crypto so you can see what's going on here. What's going on is that the elites realize, I'm not saying they're trying to pull string, I'm not getting into conspiracy theories, I'm just telling you the big money players realize the game afoot. They realize the chessboard that Bitcoin, the pawn, is playing on, and they understand how to play that game. They understand how to move the pieces to you. If not, that's what I want to help you to understand. Anyway, let's go ahead and read chat. If you want to know why Bitcoin why Bitcoin dropped and why it's blew its best chance at a rally for weeks, here's why. The opportunity for a rally was based upon people FOMOing into the fact that CPI and the EFFR were going to basically get everybody else excited. It was the potential of a FOMO rally is really what it was. That didn't do enough. It's that simple. And now when I say it blew its best chance at a rally for weeks, I'm saying, look, you got probably another 6 weeks before we see another opportunity like that, and that's the next Fed meeting. So I love Bitcoin. Bitcoin's an incredible asset. This is by the way, this is a great time to buy Bitcoin because we're sitting at the lows. If Binance goes down, you could see Bitcoin down to 10K. But in the grand scheme of things, with Bitcoin going to 100, 200, 300K this decade at least, fact of the matter is, the difference between buying it at 10 and 16K doesn't make that big of a difference. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. All right, let's read chat here for a second. We have a super chat. Really appreciate that. P Thunder01 said, I think Powell saying that rate hikes will be a wait and see until Q2, essentially, and being unsure is going to keep up between 17 till 20 till mid Q2 next year. Thoughts? Let me read that again. The rate hikes will be a wait and see game until Q2, essentially, being unsure is going to keep up between. Not exactly sure what you mean by 17 and 20. Not quite sure what you're asking. As far as it being a wait-and-see game, like I said, Powell has Congress and the Pentagon breathing down his neck. Now, that might not be public, but I guarantee you it's happening because Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve has the power over manipulating the U.S. dollar. That is a national security concern. Jerome Powell, I guarantee you, has been in talks with the Department of the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, the Secretary of State, all these different people. They care about the U.S. dollar being as strong as possible, even at the expense of the short-term growth of the economy right now. Because they know that if they wield an extremely strong dollar, then they maintain, first of all, the strength of all of our alliances, because all of our allies are allied with us because we're the big dog. After World War II, we bought everybody's alliance. We bought Europe and Japan's alliance because we went in and rebuilt them. That came with strings attached. That came with let us set your defense policy. That came with let us patrol your territorial waters with our navy. That came with let us set up military bases within your borders. That came with let us work together in an alliance and a partnership, and in exchange for us protecting territorial waters around the world so that you can go and trade for anything, anywhere, you will be part of our sphere of influence. The United States went from an era of focusing on North America and a little bit of South America to the entire planet, and that's when we became the police in the post-war agreement and the basically the setup around Bretton Woods and everything in the 1940s, 1950s. That was when the world order that we currently operate under is talking about. I'm not talking about the New World Order or whatever people talk about, with lizards. I'm not one of those people. I'm not going there. I'm just saying that a world order is the way that the world works. Right now, the world order is you have America, big dog, you have Russia and China as contenders, and they don't like America and all of its allies, which is basically the rest of the world. That's the world order. To maintain that world order, you maintain two things: the strongest military on planet Earth, and you maintain the strongest currency on planet Earth. Neither of those things are directly related to economy. They are indirectly related to economy. You need a very strong economy to maintain the military-industrial complex to build all those weapons that you're sending over to Ukraine right now. And believe me, we are ramping up production of all kinds of stuff right now. The Ukrainians have used something in excess of 1 billion rounds of ammunition, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of rockets. And you know what? More power to them, because as I said, what happens in Ukraine is existentially important to the entire fate of humanity. So if that requires sending them some rockets, I'm for it, because I stand with Ukraine. I don't stand with everything Ukraine has ever done. But as far as who I want to win that war, I have no problem admitting to you guys that I would like for Ukraine to be able to defend its territory. The U.S. needs to maintain that military, and it also needs to maintain that currency. So Jerome Powell has a vested interest in maintaining a strong dollar, because a strong dollar backs up the alliance of NATO and all of our other allies around the world, like the Philippines, like Japan, like Korea. It backs up the strength of that alliance because people want to be allied to the strongest currency, to the country with the strongest navy and the strongest currency. That's why you started for a few years there, to see people start thinking, maybe we should ally ourselves with China because it seems like they're growing quickly. And now China's coming apart at the seams. And they're all like, nope, we're back to the United States, because we've actually seen a cultural reunification of the West in the last 9 months, ever since the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. Long story short, the rates are going to keep going up, and I don't think they'll plateau at 5. I think that they'll plateau above that. No, Congress is not Bitcoin's parents. You guys really hate that I said that. Bitcoin but that's my point, isn't it? You're not my parents. You're not in charge of me. Isn't that kind of following the analogy that I'm talking about? You don't set the rules. You're not in charge of me. It's true. I'll admit, and I'll agree with you. Congress is not Bitcoin's parents, but they do set the rules within the 50 states of the United States. And Bitcoin, if it wants to grow, has to follow them. It can grow in back alleys without following them, but if it wants to grow and it wants to get invested in by TD Ameritrade, and wants to get invested in by Merrill Lynch, and wants to get invested in by JP Morgan and Wells Fargo and you want Visa and MasterCard to continue adopting it, you want that kind of adoption to take place, you got to play by the rules, period. It's the only option, unless you want to just not operate in the United States, which is the most powerful and most secure economy on planet Earth right now. That's not good for anybody. All right. Let's see what you guys are saying in chat here a little bit, and then we will keep talking here. Got some more stories I want to cover with you. A little bit about Binance and Mazars. If you're not familiar with Mazars, they are an auditing firm that audits a lot of companies in crypto, especially exchanges, and we got some interesting news about them. And we're also going to go and do the must-watch, must-watch, and I'm going to pose a question to you guys in the form of a poll. Let's see what you guys are saying. Queen said, we are pioneers. Totally agree. And by the way, side note, I have coffee today, and I will tell you why at the end of the stream. I'm still going off of coffee, but I decided to change my strategy, and I will tell you exactly why and how if you're interested. CBD Study said, lol, this analogy. Yeah, I was once dubbed the king of bad analogies, and I will take it. Because it's pretty true. Okay. Government kidnapped. We adopted BTC. Government kidnapped it. Yeah. Saudi Arabia is accepting yuan for oil is going to hit hard on the U.S. Big players wanting to rewrite the rules. Yeah, don't be sleeping on the Middle East. They're growing, and they're growing fast. And people that think that oil is going to be dead in 20 years, it's not. It's going to shift, and it's going to change. And this fusion news might change it even more. But oil is not going to be gone in 20 years. It will start to lose some of its relevance, but the petrochemical industry is never going to completely disappear. You need petrochemicals for a lot more than gasoline and jet fuel. You need it for plastics. You know how much plastic the world produces? You need petrochemical for that. You need it for paper in a lot of cases. If you look at I don't have an infographic with me, but if you look at the product lineage, if you will, of natural gas and oil, there are hundreds of products that you use every single day that come from those two commodities. All right, but let's go ahead and look at this. Binance auditor Mazars halts all crypto work. Very interesting. Mazars Group, the accounting firm used by crypto giant Binance Holdings Ltd. And other big players in the industry to vouch for their assets held in reserve, has halted all work for crypto clients, dealing a major blow to an industry seeking to shore up confidence in the wake of FTX's collapse. The French firm suspended work for cryptocurrency firms because of indications that markets haven't been reassured by the proof of reserves reports it has published so far, according to an email from the firm seen by Bloomberg News. The firm was also concerned about intense media scrutiny, the email said. I would be one of those people that is not so reassured by the proof of reserves. There needs to be more than just proof of reserves. Mazars has indicated that they will temporarily pause their work with all of their crypto clients globally, a spokesperson for Binance said in a statement to Bloomberg News on Friday. Unfortunately, this means that we will not be able to work with Mazars for the moment. Mazars spokesperson with the firm will issue a statement in due course, declining to comment any farther. The decision is a setback for an industry that's been trying to bolster its credibility with investors following the wake of the collapse of crypto exchange FTX, which has been. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm sorry, I gotta clear my throat. All right, let's try that again. I'm getting sick, by the way, so forgive me. Just as we're going into break, I'm getting sick. Great. Given that FTX itself has endangered such services prior to its collapse that seemingly missed any warning signs, cryptocurrencies fell after the report, with Bitcoin down as much as 2.7% in early Europe trading. BNB, the native token of Binance Smart Chain, fell as much as 4.5%. Reason this is important is because we need as much oversight and proof of reserves and accountability in crypto right now as we can possibly get, and we just lost an ally in that movement. Pretty simple news story. You get the point. Let's move on. One other thing that I want to share with you guys is, well, it has to do with the fact that I'm not even going to pull up an article for this. I'm just going to talk about it. So, the last 3 weeks, you've seen quite a lot going on in Congress, and this has had a big impact on Bitcoin for a multitude of reasons. One of the main reasons is that for Bitcoin to thrive, you need to have confidence from big players that they can get into crypto and they're not going to get burned by a government agency. The governments call the shots or they make shots. That's the way it works. So if you go against the government, it doesn't end well if you're in the United States. It's the way it is. Good, bad, up to you. It's the way it is. And the companies of the world, the PayPals of the world, the MasterCards of the world, the Visas of the world, the banks of the world, your bank, getting into crypto is risky. Very risky right now following FTX. Everybody and their mother that has anything to lose because the government will come for them is they are very concerned that the government may come out with a new regulation a week from now. They may come out with a new ban a week from now. They may come out with a new set of reporting that puts your company out of business. One of the things Elizabeth Warren's trying to put out is that miners would be considered money services businesses. That comes with a whole slew of accounting and tax problems that makes mining on a corporate scale a lot harder if that gets passed. Companies don't want to go into business when they don't know what game they're playing on. The chessboard is moving. The playing field is changing. You want to play on the same field so you can get used to it. It's a shifting board, and it's moving very fast following FTX. So all these hearings are not instilling a lot of confidence in players that would otherwise want to make investments in crypto. When was the last time you saw a big company try and invest in crypto that made the news? Because it would make the news. There's not much going on right now other than FTX and Russia-Ukraine. When was the last time you saw that? You haven't seen it in a while. The reason why? Because these companies understand that if they get into crypto and something changes, the entire value proposition of that investment of time and capital could actually be unprofitable if any number of things change at any given moment. So if you want to get into crypto and you're worried in 2 weeks, is there going to be a giant bill passed that makes our job a lot harder? Maybe you just keep your money in a strengthening US dollar, and maybe you put it into the manufacturing sector, which is onshoring extremely quickly into the United States. Maybe that's what you do instead of Bitcoin. Maybe you see better opportunities over the next 12 months than Bitcoin, and you put your money there. It's unfortunate, but it's true. Many big money players don't want to get into Bitcoin right now. I'm not trying to be doomsday. Bitcoin has a lot of potential and is not going anywhere other than up if you look at the aggregate in the long term. But we've never seen this type of movement on Bitcoin before. This type of movement going on geopolitically behind Bitcoin before. And the hearings are not helping for confidence in the industry for sure. Plastic is dying too. It's a dirty material. It's true that it's a dirty material, but good luck replacing it. If it can be replaced cost effectively, commercially viably, then it can happen. I'm pro peace in the wars, absolutely. Right now, I don't want anybody to get hurt. But it's also, short of a miracle, unfortunately, that isn't really likely. Okay. All right, let's see what you guys have going on here in chat. Looks like we're good. I think we can keep moving on here. Let's go. Sorry you're sick, Jebb. Have you had your cortisol checked? Stress hormone. Also consider food allergies, not medical advice. NMA, not medical advice. Yeah, I have not checked that. That's true. That's something to keep in mind. I do know that magnesium helps to break down cortisol and other stress hormones, so I've been trying to make sure my magnesium levels are good. So I'm hoping that'll help. Just going to get a lot of rest, make sure I'm eating well. Hopefully that'll do well. Look at that. Andre is in chat. Hey, what's up, man? Good to see you. As a family member of mine. Good to see you, Andre. Happy you're here. You'll probably enjoy the next segment, Andre, that of what we're talking about here, if you have time to stick around. And that has to do with this Google search. U.S. sending Patriot missiles to Ukraine. You might be wondering why that's important, why we're talking about that on a crypto channel. Let me just back up again and make sure you understand why we talk about Russia and Ukraine on this channel, because people ask every single time I do it. Here's why. The conflict in Ukraine is the single most important geopolitical development that the world has seen since the fall of the Soviet Union. I'd say even more important than 9/11, more important than 2008, and more important than the pandemic. And I'll tell you why. All of those things were not fundamental shifts in the game board geopolitically. Those were black swan events that you could recover from and things could go back to normal from. COVID being the least of those, but you could go back to normal after 2008. You could go back to normal after 9/11. Not to in any way downplay how terrible both of those events were, because they were horrible and the aftermath was terrible. But from a geopolitical standpoint, the world could go back to normal. Pandemic, not so much, but we probably could have gone back. We just would have worn masks and everybody would have had air purifiers in their office and remote work and yada yada. Things would most likely continue going on the same way. Russia and Ukraine's changed things because Russia and Ukraine and China, which is going under a simultaneous demographical collapse, especially over the next 20 years, especially over the next 5. Those three countries more or less going offline. Not entirely, but almost entirely offline. China being the least of them, but that's about to change pretty soon with the pandemic going crazy over there. There's a wildfire of cases in China right now. They won't report it, but it's happening. It's bad. It's really bad. You're about to see China become the biggest news story in the next 2 to 3 weeks when they start having massive lockdowns again, or they try to. It's going to get bad over there in China, more than likely. That fundamentally changed things because it broke trust in globalization. 2008 didn't break trust in globalization. 9/11 didn't break trust in globalization. It made people not want to fly for 3 months, not 6 months, 9 months, but people forgot about that because they need to go places. What's going on in Russia and Ukraine changes the assumption that conflict doesn't hit Europe. It changes the assumption that our supply chains are stable. It changes the assumption that we can rely on Russia and Ukraine both to manage not the majority, but a large plurality of the staple food crops that the world consumes. Many assumptions are broken. Peace on the European continent, it's broken. NATO not really being important anymore because the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. That assumption's broken by a long shot. NATO is just as relevant as it ever has been. And if you don't believe me, ask Norway, who's trying to join. By the way, Norway joining NATO, that's a direct border with Russia. Whew. That's where most of the nukes are. That's up by Vladivostok, where the North Sea Fleet is stationed. 1,000 miles of border between those two nations, and one of them being a NATO ally. Norway probably won't allow NATO bases to be built on its territory, but that's still a big deal. It's still a really big deal. The global order, which is based on trust and or lack of trust, but at least assumptions that the trust and the lack of trust will stay the same. Everyone 2 years ago could expect North Korea is going to be the crazy guy. China is going to be the bully who's growing very quickly, but seems a little unstable. Russia's just going through a midlife crisis, and everybody else is just trading and doing their thing and minding their own business. That's the geopolitical world order that we had. Everything changed. All of a sudden, North Korea seems like forgot about them. When was the last time you heard about them? They're still doing missile tests, just nobody cares because they're focusing on Russia and Ukraine and China. China's about to implode on itself because of demography. If you don't believe me that China's about to go under a huge crisis this decade, here's 5 reasons why that I can come up with off the top of my head. Xi Jinping is in an echo chamber and nobody can get information to him, so he has no idea what's going on in the country, so he can't run the thing effectively, and everybody draws their authority from him. They have a water shortage because desertification is creeping up on Beijing, and they're running out of farmland to feed their population. Not that bad, not just that bad, though, because one of their biggest trading partners, Russia, can no longer do trade with hardly anybody, let alone China. Because China doesn't want to upset the rest of the world, they're having a very difficult time getting anything from Russia, getting anything from anybody to feed themselves, because it's not so much they can't trade with Russia, it's that they can't get a lot of these things from the rest of the world because they don't exist. Russia was the biggest exporter of food, of wheat specifically, globally. Everybody has a wheat shortage, so prices have gone up. It's getting harder because of a land, water, and trade problem for China to feed itself. They've also got the pandemic about to go wild because they don't have vaccines that work. You can argue all day about the side effects of vaccines. They did seem to help stop the spread in America. Not getting into the side effects debacle, but the point is it did seem to slow down the spread, even if they had crazy side effects. And on top of that, China has a demography problem. I may have said that one already. They have a demography problem. They have almost no young people and a ton of old people that are going to go through the period where they're not working, but they're still alive. And that's a 30-year period when you hit 65, 70, but these people could live to 100, and the state has to keep up with 100 million people. China's going through big problems. Russia's going through big problems. Ukraine's going through big problems. That sets the stage geopolitically. Why is it important for Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin plays on that stage. That simple. If you don't know how this ties in, it's very simple how it ties in. What goes on in the world directly impacts Bitcoin. Directly, not indirectly, directly impacts Bitcoin. If you don't understand what's going on in the world, you're not going to understand what's going on in Bitcoin. Full stop. Because if you're only looking at the technicals and the fundamentals inside of crypto, you're in an echo chamber. You're in a bubble. You're like Xi. You can't. The messenger can't get anything to you because you can't see it. I'm not attacking you for that. I'm just saying that that's the reality. You have to understand the world at large to understand what's going on in crypto. And it's illuminating. It really is. Because if it was just crypto and everything else was hunky-dory and there wasn't a war and there weren't rising interest rate and inflation wasn't crazy and China wasn't being China for the last 4,000 years, China will come together and then break apart. It's going through the break apart right now. Then you would see Bitcoin probably was already back in its bull market. If everything was business as usual, like it was 2015 or something, we were partying like it was 2018, Bitcoin would probably be at $35,000 right now, if not higher. It would already have bottomed out. It would already be going into a bull market, and all the cycles would have looked the same, and it would have been great. So if you're wondering, why is it still going down when it should have bottomed, and it's getting to that point, the technicals are important, and they will be followed for the most part, but they're going to deviate when it comes to geopolitics. All right, getting into the news here. What's the next development on this epic? U.S. finalizing plans to send Patriot missile defense system to Ukraine. Pause. A Patriot missile system is a radar, it is some support vehicles, and it is a missile battery where this battery will fire a $3 million missile to shoot down an incoming missile. Basically, it's a bullet trying to hit a bullet. The Israelis have a ton of these things. basically is a form of an iron dome. The U.S. has them on almost every single military base in case a barrage of missiles were to come in. Basically, the United States have been sending a lot of equipment, but not their highest tech stuff to Ukraine. They've sent HIMARS, they've sent Javelins, they've sent all kinds of supporting equipment. They've helped train people on the ground. They've sent ammunition, they've sent rockets. They've not sent F-35 Lightnings, they've not sent F-22s, they've obviously not sent any naval ships. They've got nowhere to put them. And they have not sent tanks. They have sent some vehicles, I think, but they have not really sent any weapon systems like this that could penetrate into Russia, because the United States does not want to condone Ukraine hitting Russian soil. The Ukrainians are doing that on their own. At least that's the story that is believable. But they have not sent them Patriot missile batteries either, because they didn't want to send them their highest tech stuff. And they also don't believe that the Ukrainians are trained well enough to utilize them. But now, with Russia taking out critical infrastructure, because Russia's playing dirty, they want to win. They're playing dirty, trying to knock out the electrical infrastructure so everybody freezes and the Ukrainian civilization shuts down. That's pretty dirty, Russia. The world knows it. It's a human rights issue. So the U.S. realizes that they can help Ukraine to continue to win the war, which, again, remember, is existentially important to the survival of mankind. Not to put it too bluntly, but it's true. The way that you shore up the defense of NATO and you keep Russia away is by using Ukraine as a buffer state, shoring up their defenses, and making sure that they fight the battle for us. So send them everything we got. That's basically the mentality. Send them everything we got that won't allow them to attack inside of Russia and that isn't too expensive, because we don't want to lose our own military while funding them. So Patriot missile systems are going over there to shoot down the rockets that Russia is sending. But Russia doesn't like this. Russia warns of U.S. on sending Patriot missiles to Ukraine. This could entail consequences, they said. And then there's also there's another article over here if you want to read and pause. But essentially, they're basically saying there will be consequences if you send Patriot missile batteries to Ukraine. The West has been calling Russia's bluff for 10 months straight now. I think they're willing to call their bluff again to defend civilians from rockets raining down on their apartment buildings. So I'm pretty sure that will get approved. It's really sad that that's what's going on in Ukraine, but it is true. All right. Let's see. The Iron Dome isn't as good as the Patriot. That's true. War is dirty. What do you expect? Totally. Absolutely agree. Patriot missiles shoot down ICBM and can hit aircraft. Yep, it's pretty important. It's part of the United States missile defense system. Sweden and Finland joining NATO, sir. Swede. I'm sorry, did I say Norway? I apologize. I did say Norway. Not Norway. Finland. I apologize. I know better. It's not Norway, Finland, Sweden. Sorry about that. All right. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about here is nuclear fusion. This is a pretty big story, and this could have huge impacts on Bitcoin 30 years from now. With historic explosion, a long-sought fusion breakthrough. All right. Like I said, I have a background in physics, so I've been studying this for over a decade. Yes, I know I was 12 a decade ago. That's how much of a nerd I was. The thing that nuclear physicists are trying to do with fusion is combine atoms using less energy than it produces so that you create a commercially viable nuclear power plant that takes basically no input and creates no radioactive waste and creates free infinite energy. Sounds pretty cool, right? Free infinite energy. There is, but there's basically no real commodity resource input like coal or natural gas or uranium or plutonium, or in the case of solar panels, silicon. It's a one-time investment, but still. Nuclear fusion works very simply. I'll break it down as easily as I can. Basically, you take two hydrogen nuclei, you take a deuterium and a tritium nuclei, deuterium being one proton, that makes it hydrogen, one neutron, that makes it deuterium. It has an atomic mass of 2. You take a tritium, which is one proton and 2 neutrons, which gives it an atomic mass of 3. You combine them together under 200 million degree heat, which is as hot as the core of a star. Both of those nuclei fuse. That extra neutron flies off, releasing pure energy, and then hopefully you get more energy than you put into the system. That's never happened before until 11 days ago. We've never gotten more energy out of that reaction than we put into it. Than we put into it. If you put 100 megajoules into it, you only got 50 megajoules out. Well, that's where this breakthrough comes in. For 70 years, people have been trying to do this and prove this technology in an engineering sense. It was proved from a physics standpoint almost a century ago, but from an engineering standpoint, that's what they've been working on for 7 decades, ever since the end of the Second World War. More energy out than in. It's called a positive Q ratio. For 7 decades, fusion scientists have chased this elusive goal known as energy gain. At 1 a.m. on 5th of December, researchers at the National Ignition Facility in California finally did it. It's one of the largest research facilities in the country, and it has to do with nuclear fusion. Focusing 2.05 megajoules of laser light onto a tiny capsule of fusion fuel and sparking an explosion that produced 3.15 megajoules of energy. Whoa. The equivalent of about 3 sticks of dynamite. Great Scott! That's what Doc Brown would say. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal, because if you get more energy out than you put in, profit. That's what coal is. You set coal on fire, you put just a tiny little bit of energy into it, and then it's a self-combustible commodity, not element, but molecule and resource, and it burns itself and it releases way more energy than you had to put into it. Nuclear power plants, you set them there, you make sure it doesn't go through a meltdown, and then it releases energy. Easy peasy. Just got to make sure you have a containment unit and all the supporting infrastructure to make sure it stays cool and doesn't melt down. With this, though, nuclear fusion, you have to go through an active process. You have to actively put in energy into the system and try and get profit out. At the Jet facility, they had a tokamak reactor at it's not at Harvard. I forget where Jet is. Anyway, excuse me. I said Jet is not in America. It's in Europe. Jet in the 70s, they tried to, in the 90s, they put in a certain amount of energy, and they got less of it out than they needed to replace it. So, for example, it actually says it here on ITER's website. We'll talk about what ITER is here in a second. In 1997, Jet produced 16 megawatts of fusion power from a total input of 24 megawatts. ITER's trying to get a Q10. So basically what this means is that they got a Q1.5. Q1 being 10 megawatts in, 10 megajoules in, whatever number you're using, 10 megawatts, 10 megajoules out. 1-to-1, you put in X amount of power, you get out X amount of power. What researchers are trying to do is prove from an engineering standpoint that you can get X plus something out. You put in X and you get X plus something. X plus 1, X plus 2, X plus 3, whatever. If you can do that, then you've proven nuclear fusion as a power source from a physics standpoint and engineering standpoint. That gives you one final step, and that's from a commercial standpoint, which is actually an engineering problem in its own right. Now what physicists have to do, since we've proven that this can be done, and I don't have time to go into the differences between a tokamak reactor and a laser reactor, but it being a laser reactor, it's actually pretty good that that's the one that they figured out how it works, because tokamaks we pretty much believe are going to work through ITER. ITER's just always 5-10 years away. That's the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor being built in France. If you want to look into that, go to iter.gov and go and consume some of that if you're interested in what a tokamak reactor is. Basically a big donut with electromagnets that holds 200 million degree plasma that creates electricity. The next challenge is to commercialize this. If this goes commercial, then you can use fusion to replace the entire electrical grid in one way or another. You can use fusion to replace the base load. Base load is mainly handled by coal and is mainly handled by fission nuclear power plants. Those are two different processes. Don't have time to get into it. You basically replace 60% of the entire base load of the grid if you're able to make it commercially viable and make it cheaper than everything else around. Since it's the laser type rather than the tokamak type, you can turn that on and off very quickly, which means you can also replace natural gas in the form of peaking plants. So you can replace 85% of the entire electrical grid with this and have absolutely no input when it comes to fuel costs. That's a big deal. It's probably also going to take 30 years to figure it out, because commercializing that requires not only having the technology, it also requires making that technology as cheap as you can possibly make it, and then figuring out how to get civilians to work on it that have not been working on this technology for 30 years. You have to turn this into a power plant now. Taking it from an experiment to a power plant, that takes time. That takes a lot of time. So don't expect this to be a big deal geopolitically in the next couple of decades. But in the 2050s, if this has been proven physically, 2040s, 2050s, you can expect that you're going to start seeing some nuclear fusion power plants come online. And when that happens, whoo-wee, that changes everything. Because all of a sudden, you don't have to trade with your enemy to get coal or natural gas or uranium to power your country, or natural gas, as I said, if you're Germany, other than for petrochemicals. But for energy, you can do it with water. You get hydrogen from water. You can get neutrons from any element, and then you need a little bit of lithium to catalyze the reaction. You can get lithium from just about anywhere in the tiny quantities that it's needed. Everybody can onshore their own energy power production. Anyway, I'm running over time. Hope you guys enjoyed today's stream. The reason that that is important is because if you see fusion come online in the 40s or 50s, the 2040s, 2050s, then that means that there's clean energy. Mining Bitcoin is no longer a dirty concept, because you can mine Bitcoin with a fusion power reactor, and then you completely remove this idea that, oh, it's using fossil fuels. No, because you can use a fusion power plant to do it. They're doing the same thing right now with solar, wind, and geothermal, but if you have fusion, it makes it a lot easier. So fusion equals perpetual war. It actually may lead to more isolationism, because you don't have to rely on other people to get your energy reserves. Yes, so that is actually an important part of that. All right, guys. Really appreciate all of you guys tuning in. If you enjoyed today's stream, I want you to do a few things. Smash the like button. Let's get to 500 likes. Really appreciate it. Let's also go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We will be back, and we'll have a great time when we get back. December 29th. RC Moore donated. Good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while, my friend. Can Exodus delete its site or wallet from the app? I have all my crypto in there. No, because the private keys are held on your own wallet. I haven't used Exodus in a few years, but I do believe it is a good product. Also, make sure to follow us on all of our social media and sign up for Lux Algo. You can find a link for that down below. And by the way, just a final shout out, make sure to check out AnthonyPriceCPA.com, because Anthony Price will help you with your taxes, but you've only got another 15 days before the year's over, and then whatever happened has happened, and it's done. Really appreciate all of you guys tuning in. Before I go, I do just first want to thank each and every single last one of you for watching, as always, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.